OU TCU. So right now, Oklahoma is favored by 6.5 after a pretty shocking, I would say pretty shocking loss to Kansas State last week. And it had a lot of OU fans worried on the recruiting side of the things, and people were on the radio saying that Brent Venables should just go ahead and go to Nebraska. You know how OU fans are; they start overreacting really quickly when Oklahoma falls a little bit. I see Jay over there just hanging his head. So OU's favored by 6.5. They're going to have to go to Dallas Fort Worth, and they're going to have to play Sonny Dykes. And I would expect to see something similar to what we saw against Kansas State in terms of that offense with Max Duggan. And also, Lincoln Riley's brother is out there as on the part of the offensive coaches. So I'm curious to see if anybody is able to catch him while they're out there and see what they say. But, Jance, what do you think about this one?
Over this is a much needed win for Oklahoma, and I think that they need to win by dominating fashion. I think that last week for the most part was, I was, me and Jay, we kind of talked about this on Chris Griffin's show on Horns Down podcast, but I had them winning 45-17, or I think 45-17, 45-13. I had them winning huge because I thought that overall wise, the defensive side of the ball was getting a lot better. They were getting a lot more pressure, especially from the rush defense, as far as, getting penetration, as far as being disruptive, and as far as their edge rushers getting better. Back into their secondary, I thought the whole collective unit I thought was getting a lot better. And I feel like that's the type of football that we've seen Brent Venables and, with Bates and a lot of those guys kind of performed in the respect in Clemson, right? Where those defenses kind of performed at a high level. But I think we definitely learned from last week's performance that there still is a lot of work to do. These are not Brent Venables players for the most part. These are still Lincoln Riley's players. So you have to introduce a new core, which is, again, that's, 1, 2, maybe 3 recruiting classes in, where that's where we can see the complete overhaul of that team. And maybe we can see that because, early in the season, we saw, some ounces of just the type of things that Brent Venables really wants to try to put in, as far as some of the things that he wants to try to get acclimated, at least with that defense. So I think for the most part, from what we saw from last week, it definitely needs to get a lot better. They need to start to play a little more aggressive. They need to start putting more pressure, doing a really, really nice job of containment, because it's crazy that Tulane, out of all schools, was the one school that really shut down Kansas State, shut down that running game, contained their quarterback. It was crazy what Martinez was able to do. He had a Heisman-like game. So I think Oklahoma, they need to go back to the drawing board, figure out what are some of their weaknesses, some of the holes, some of their strengths, what they can do, and try to fix those particular areas or expand upon their strengths going into this game. But this is a very, very important game. But I for the most part, I do think that this is an overreaction from Oklahoma fans. I think, no one had Oklahoma making the playoffs for this particular year. If this is going to be one of the losses, I'm actually kind of glad it would, if I was an Oklahoma fan, it would happen now compared to it would happen maybe later on this season. Because now you really have a good idea of what the team is now, and what can we do now to improve and get better. Because now that's hope going into next year. That say, hey, now we can implement these recruiting classes. We now see exactly what we need to work on. This is a really, really good good thing for us overall wise. So we'll see what happens about it. But TCU for the most part, they're a dangerous squadron. They're not the best team in the world, but Max Duggan and that squadron over there. They're going to take a look at that tape, and they're going to be licking their chops. They're going to be taking a look at some of the weaknesses, some of the holes that Oklahoma's defense more particularly has. Oklahoma's offense still is dangerous, despite what Oklahoma fans say about Dylan Gabriel. Yes, did he have the greatest game in the world? Probably not, but he still had a pretty decent day for the most part. The offense had a decent day, just missed opportunities. I feel like missed execution from that defense. From that offense overall from Oklahoma. I just feel like the defense definitely had way more of a problem compared to what the offense had. And I feel like TCU's offense is going to be licking their chops and going to say, if Kansas State can do that, we certainly have an opportunity to definitely show out against Oklahoma and Dallas. So I think that this is a great opportunity to try to learn from your mistakes, correct what you saw during the film last week, get right back at it, and try to put on a dominant performance against TCU.
Yeah, to add to that, to be honest, I think the one of the bigger things to think about and I love the outside perspective on this is, yeah, everybody's overreacting. Everybody's freaking out about something that they don't need to be freaking out about.
Yeah.
It really isn't that serious that we lost to Kansas State, the team that we've lost 2-3 of the last 4 years. There's a reason why we keep losing to them. Kleiman has Oklahoma's number right now. He's the coach that has our number. And before that, Snyder had our number. Like they have an understanding of Oklahoma in an intimate way, especially the coaches that have been through here who technically have come from like the Kansas State tree. Like I think that's the one thing a lot of us aren't remembering. Bob Stoops is Kansas State tree. Brent Venables is Kansas State tree. A lot of that stuff is passed down from them. So yeah, they got a better understanding as an institution about Oklahoma. So this loss, I'm a lot better with this loss in comparison to any other because that was also a veteran team. Like a lot of people picked Kansas State to win the Big 12 this year. Like this was the team in the 5 years that Kleiman has been there. This is his best team.
That was my dark horse. That was my dark
horse.
Right.
That is a lot of people's dark horse. And everybody's starting to see, oh, okay, this is starting to make sense for them being a dark horse. Now, the Tulane loss, I talked about this before. We got to remember, Tulane's down there in Louisiana. They can get talent. Like they can throw a rock and get some really good talent, either someone that they got themselves or someone that fell from grace from another big program. So they can get that talent in Louisiana. Those grounds are so fertile for top athletes and players. It's not that hard to get them. I mean, why do you think Alabama's, Oklahoma's, Florida's, everybody's trying to recruit players out of Louisiana to where Ed Ogeron had one of the greatest rosters in college football history when he won a national championship? 3 coaches at LSU have won championships, 3 different ones since 2000. That tells you enough about the state itself. So I digress on that part. In this game, I think the biggest thing that Oklahoma has to pay attention to is looking at what happened with Kansas State. They're not going to face another Adrian Martinez for the rest of the season. I think the closest one they have to Adrian is going to be Spencer Sanders. I think he's the most veteran out of the conference. He's about it. You're not going to see another Adrian. Adrian had 5 years of experience knowing how to scramble, knowing how to pass. I mean, he was surviving in Nebraska somehow, like surviving, not winning, but he was surviving the whole Scott Frost deal. And so a lot of Nebraska fans I talked to, they were basically saying, oh, it appears that we know who the problem was at Nebraska just by his performance in that game. Hell, he did the same thing against Oklahoma when he was in town last year at Nebraska. So that game to me just shows a team that was overly prepared, and then they let Tulane be their trap game. So for Oklahoma, this TCU game cannot be the trap game going into the Red River. I do not like the fact that this will be back-to-back trips into the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, so 2 straight quote-unquote travel games. They've got to get their mind right in preparation for not only Texas but TCU. So quarterback-wise, Matt Duggins, he's a mover. He can move, but he's only rushed for like 39 yards this season. He gets sacked a lot. So he holds the ball a lot. So this is the opportunity for Ethan Downs and Reggie Grimes to get out there and get them sacks again that they were getting before. And Stutzman being able to make some moves and Deshaun White get some good blitzes in. I don't think they have to go back to the drawing board fully. I just think that everyone needs to commit to what they're supposed to do and do their job. Chance, you made the best point possible. These aren't Brent Venables guys. But the one thing we've learned about the players that Lincoln Riley and them was recruiting is they were recruiting talent. The only issue was kind of coaching, if you really think about it. A lot of these talented players ended up in the league, and they're actually doing pretty solid. When you get good, competent coaching, guess what? Players seem to perform, oddly enough. So for these players, they're got to get adjusted. There's a lot of old habits that have to be, erased from these players' memories over the last few years, and it implanted good habits that will lead them to do what they're supposed to do. We saw it the first 3 weeks. We know they're capable of it. Now they have to buckle down and get just disciplined in this game against Max. So one last point that I think that's going to be real critical in this game. I've talked about this entire season, that the offense, and I say this all the time, and any time you hear me give an analysis of something, the offense has to help the defense, and the defense has to help the offense. And this is what I mean. The offense has to help the defense by holding the ball sometimes so the defense can rest. The defense's job of helping the offense is to get the other team off the field as fast as possible so the offense can keep cooking. That's kind of a yin and yang. That's the relationship you're supposed to have. Oklahoma is 130th out of 131 teams for time of possession, averaging about 24 minutes per game. We're getting the ball out quick, we're scoring fast, or we're punting. So if that is the case, even with the running game that has been pretty good, we score too fast. And so we're putting a lot of pressure on the defense. And that's something, I don't know how you do it. It feels like the defense has to find a way to get the ball out of other teams' hands so that the offense can maybe run it down their throat a lot more. I don't know. That's the one thing I'm trying to figure out what the solution is. And I think that's something that Venables and Levy's going to have to try to figure out as a team, as a staff, because being that low in time of possession, that, like I said, it means two things for us. We score very, very fast, and our defense is getting leaned on heavy. We've got to figure out a fix for that.
Yeah, so I think some of the keys for OU in this game is really you have to get off to a good start on both sides of the ball. All 4 games this season, OU has gotten out to a slow start on offense and the defensive side. And I don't know if that's just they're going pretty vanilla at the beginning of the game, just trying to get a feeler for, hey, how's the defense going to play or how's the offense going to play on this side of the ball. Listen, you just need to come out guns blazing on both sides, give them your best, because what happens is, and we talked about this earlier in the week, you give the other team momentum when you allow them to score. And ultimately they come in knowing I can beat this team. So you cannot put yourself in a position where you're down 7-0 or 14-0. It doesn't work. And so they've got to be able to go in there and they've got to get a fresh start. OU fans need to back off Dillon Gabriel. Remember, he's not a Kyler Murray. He's not a Baker Mayfield. He's not Caleb Williams. We have been really blessed with, 5 quarterbacks that are really, really good. And I'm going to include Spencer in there because Spencer is a really, really good quarterback. He just needs a really, really good offensive line so that he doesn't have to scramble. But
which he hasn't seen yet.
Yeah, I know. But, Dillon Gabriel's a pretty dang good quarterback, and you've been able to see him make a lot of those downfield throws. And I don't understand why people are so upset with the offense this year. The offense is scoring more points through 4 games than they did last year. And so I regress from getting upset at people, but ultimately I think that's the big key. Start out strong and finish the game strong. We're doing a good job at, in the third quarter, coming out of halftime and really laying it on people, but we need to do that in the first quarter as well. And that's what OU fans are really accustomed to here in Norman, is seeing the team come out there and just be dominant, in the first half. So I want to see that from Brent Venables, and I want to see that from what's his name? Levy up there as well. So I've actually got OU winning this game 45-17. We've heard a lot of things coming out about how they've had better practices this week. Last week it seemed like they had good practices. This week they have. They feel like they've cleaned up a lot of the things and the problems that they're having. We'll see. The offensive line, I think, is probably still the biggest question mark on this team. There is just a lot of inconsistency there. And we thought maybe bringing back Wanye Morris was going to help because the Nebraska game
for a week.
They had, Nebraska game 0 false starts, and this game they had like 5. So we'll see just what that offensive line is going to bring us. Right, I think that's going to be a big team or a big thing for this team going through the rest of the season. If that offensive line plays well, I think you're going to see both sides of the ball play better. Because you're going to see the offense be able to do a lot more, hold the ball for a little bit longer, which gives the defense a little bit more of a break. So, but I've got them winning 45-17. What do you guys think your scores are?
Go ahead, Jance.
I got Oklahoma winning 41. I'm gonna say 41-21. Oklahoma. I think that for the most part, I think they're gonna have a much better outing than what they did this week. I think TCU is going to start off hot. I think they're going to get some sort of confidence based off what they saw from the film from last week. But I think Oklahoma does rebound. I think they lean a little bit more into the run game for this time. I feel like you can make an argument that's kind of what they got away from a little bit compared to some of the other previous games for. So maybe they start to lean in more to Marcus Majors and a lot of those, and again, a lot of those guys, the Eric Graves of the world. So we'll see what happens with that. But I do think that this is going to be a game where they don't have to, fully rely on Dillon Gabriel to go out there and try to win them the game. I think this is going to be a game. It's going to be slow tempo. Defense is going to get their rest. Offense is going to do what they're going to have to do. I think Oklahoma has a bounce back week, and they win 41-21.
Yeah, I'm closer in that score with you. I think that it's going to probably be just a little bit closer. I think it's going to be 35-21. I can see TCU throwing some bombs and catching the Sooners off guard. That's one thing they do very well. Max Duggins will launch that thing. He'll throw it down the field with no problems. And he's had 3 100-yard games in his career. Going from last year and this year, not really, but last year he does scoot. So he's going to go out there and he's going to launch it. He's going to be able to move around. So as long as Oklahoma has a spy that's fast enough to keep up with him, we may play a little bit more mechanic and just chase this dude down and tackle him. He's going to get some plays off, but I don't think he gets too many. If we can keep them up front and force them to throw shorter passes, it'll be good. But I think it's going to be 35-21. I see Dylan Gabriel going deep. The TCU secondary is solid, but they don't handle the deep ball very well. Just keep launching it to Mims and Farouk and just let them bad boys go and just call it a day. And then at the same time, in the game with the run, you should be running a bunch of gray, a bunch of majors, and then bring in Javonte Barnes to finish them off and just keep running it down their throat. 35-21.